Welcome back. I have decided to jump on here today to fulfill a very requested video. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen that over the past 5 years I've just been traveling all over the place teaching yoga, and I always get messages asking me how I do it, how I find places, how I can afford it, is it really as good as it looks? I get messages saying, you have the most amazing dream life, I wish I could do the same. And I'm here to tell you that you can, but I'm also here to tell you a few home truths about traveling, what it entails, especially in the yoga space, and what it will mean for you if you decide to travel the world teaching yoga. The way to do it, if you've not got loads of money, if you do, lucky you, go wherever you like. But if you don't and you're kind of trying to do it on a budget, the way to do it is through karma yoga, or selfless service, or Seva, or however you want to call it, which basically means that you're kind of doing an exchange, or you are offering up your service for whatever they want to give you. So actually sometimes this will be paid, but mostly it's an exchange for accommodation and food. Sometimes you get additional activities, whatever's going on in their resort or ashram or retreat center, depending on where you go. But that's how I do it. So that's secret number one. I'm doing exchanges the whole time. So really, in theory, you just need to be saving enough money to buy your flights, your visas, depending on where you're going, and obviously keep a bit in the back pocket for if there's any emergencies, which we will get to. Okay, so my first rule for when you're finding a position is to be really clear in your own mind about what you want before you even started looking. So you want to know exactly what you're prepared to do day to day. So maybe your intention for the trip is to dive completely into this selfless service. So you could be doing a full day of just helping out around the retreat center, which is absolutely great if that's what you are intending to do. However, if you're not, and you end up in that position because you've not fully thought about what you're willing to accept, then it's not gonna make for a very nice trip. So be absolutely clear in your mind. An example that springs to mind for me is that I went to this beautiful retreat center, this was last year in Canada, and I'd done these before, so I knew I wanted to go and teach a few classes of yoga a day in exchange for accommodation, have some free time for myself, be able to explore, be able to see some of Canada I'd never been before. And that's pretty much what they offered me, as well as 10 hours helping out around the retreat center. And in the span of a week, that's not too bad. And they said it would be a bit of like housekeeping, maybe helping like put plates out at the dinner table, whatever. And I assumed the rest would kind of be like greeting guests, setting up the yoga studio, doing the yoga-y thing, seeing as that's why I'm here. However, I got there and immediately, actually, after a very long flight and had just managed to get there with bags, I was told to leave my bags, not even shown to my room, and then immediately go and wash some dishes, which I hadn't even eaten dinner off of myself. Which fine, so I did, but then I came to realize that I was put on a schedule for the entire week, which was 3 hours of dishes a day, as well as cleaning toilets every day and cleaning out other people's rooms, like guests' rooms, and that was not in my job description. I did very little yoga, and so I stayed there a week and then left. And I was in Canada for a month, so I quickly had to find something else. So yes, rule number one, be clear about what you want. Rule number two, communicate with the person about what you want. So doing your research, so asking them so many questions, and don't feel weird about doing this. They fully expect this. If they're expecting a service from you, you expect something back. So you need to be clear with them. And I'd recommend to do this in writing as well, asking them exactly how many hours do you expect of me per day? How do you log those hours? What's my accommodation going to be like? Who am I sharing with? Can I choose who I'm sharing with? Find out how many other people are volunteering there. So this is a big one, because if you're at a retreat center and you're surrounded by guests and you're the only volunteer, you're going to have no one to speak to, you're going to have no one to hang out with in your downtime. You'll probably make friends with guests, but they're there to do their own thing. So I wouldn't rely on that. So definitely make that a question. Even if there's only one, I've been to places where there's just one person, we've been very lucky and we've gelled completely and it's been great. And you've got to remember that they're there for the same reason. So it's likely that they'll be the kind of person that wants to make friends as well. So one is fine, just make sure that there is one. Ask about food, if you have any special diets, so if you're vegan, gluten-free, whatever, if you have any allergies, make sure that they can cater for you before you go, otherwise it's going to be quite difficult. And really explain to them as well, especially if you're going somewhere that maybe these kind of diets aren't so commonplace, explain to them what you mean. When I was in Nepal, there was quite a few students who were gluten-free, they didn't have a clue what they meant, and they kept giving them gluten every day and it was just a nightmare. So make that clear that this is what you expect. Also, just find out about the place generally. So find out if there's places that you can walk to or get easily transported to, if there's public transport or tuk-tuks or wherever you're going. Make sure that you're not in a place which is completely isolated, because when you have days off, you'll want to go out and explore and you'll probably need a much needed break from wherever you've been the whole time, depending on how long you're staying. So yeah, see if there's local tourist attractions that you can easily get to. Find out a bit about the place, if there's things that you particularly want to see. Ask if they'll be able to help you organise a way to see them. They normally are, they're normally really good, but it's definitely good to find out these things before you go. Okay, rule number 3, check legalities. And I know it sounds boring, but it will save you a lot of trouble. So if you need visas, make sure that you have those in advance. Find out the exact entry requirements that are needed from your country into their country. Find out how long you can stay. Find out if there are any charges. Find out that if you do want to stay longer, how much that is going to cost you and what is the process to go about doing that. If you can do it in advance, I'd recommend. Because there's been many experience at visa offices where I've just been sat there for about 8 hours, or I've had to go back multiple times. So if you can get it all sorted beforehand and the cost isn't too different, then I definitely recommend doing that. It's also important to know if your visa covers you for volunteering. I know it sounds a bit weird, but some countries count volunteering as work, even though there's no payment. So I mean, it doesn't sound very yogic of me, but everyone does it. I would kind of recommend that when you go somewhere, you always say it's a tourist trip. There'll be a lot of countries that ask what the purpose of your visit is, and you might also need to fill out a slip. Just say it's a tourist visit, because some countries aren't very black and white, and there's a bit of a grey area about volunteering. A lot of them, it is legal to volunteer on a tourist visa, but the authorities can kind of not even quite know themselves sometimes. I've been interrogated at borders when I know full well it's perfectly legal what I'm doing. So I've just learned that to say I'm there on a holiday, or I'm there to, you can even say I'm there to practice yoga, just don't say you're teaching it. And that will save you a lot of trouble. If you are working, do get a working visa. There are a lot of people who try and slip under the radar and just do it on a tourist visa and kind of do cash in hand and stuff, which is all very well if you don't get caught out. If you do, you could face deportation or worse, and it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And I do know a lot of people that that's happened to. In fact, I was in Sri Lanka recently teaching there, and there were girls my age being taken and put in prison for a week until they could get a flight home, which is just absolutely terrifying. So don't skip or try and slip under the radar with that kind of thing. It's just better to be safe, especially if you're in a different country. Also, just a few health things. Make sure that you get the right jabs, the right injections, especially if you're going somewhere outside of your region. And just make sure you get all that stuff done before you go. You don't want to worry about it when you're there. Okay, my final rule, and something that is very important, is to not panic when things go wrong. And I say when because something will. It's just inevitable. It's part of traveling on your own. It's part of the excitement, which I know sounds crazy, but you do kind of have to just be self-sufficient, find solutions, and it's not as terrifying as you may think, especially if you've done your research on the place. You have to remember that if you arrive at a place, like I did with the toilet cleaning place, if you arrive at a place and it's not for you, you do not owe them anything. You do not have to stay in a position that you're uncomfortable with. There are ways around it. There are people who will help you, and you don't have to feel stuck. And this is a big one for me because I've felt that quite a few times, and it's kind of like, oh, I've made this arrangement though, this was the plan. You have a day of panicking, like what am I going to do, especially if you're there long term. There are things that you can do, there are people that you can reach out to, and there is always a solution. Also, don't be scared to confront whoever it is that you're working with, and not confront, but just tell them, this isn't quite what I was expecting. Is there anything we can do to make it better for both of us? And I'm not saying that you'll have loads of these things. Normally, if you've done all the things that I've said, it will all work out because you've been very clear. But sometimes things come up and it's like, oh, we didn't quite discuss this, or you just don't like the vibe of the place, and that's fine. You know, you're there for free. They're getting a free service from you. You can cut that at any time, so don't worry. How do I find these places? There are a number of ways. One way, which is quite a long-winded way, but it does allow you to be very specific, is to literally find a place that you want to go, look up resorts there and just email loads of resorts, hotels, existing retreat companies, and just see if they need a helping hand, if they have an exchange program, if they have a volunteer type thing. Just email loads and give them an idea of what you're looking for, how long you want to spend there. And 9 times out of 10 you get some kind of reply, even if it isn't exactly what you're looking for. It does take a long time. It also means that you really have to hone in on where you want to go. And sometimes if you're like, I just want to go somewhere but I'm not sure where, it's not the best way, because you kind of have to narrow yourself down to only the ones that you've just found yourself. So what I personally like to do is use Yoga Trade, which is a website. It has a little subscription fee, but I think it's only like $12 a year. So it's really worth it. Perfect place to just look and see what's out there. There have been times where I've had no idea where I wanted to go, not even sure if I wanted to go somewhere, and then I'd go on there and there'd be something that's listed and I'm like, yes, that's something that sounds great. So most of mine have come from there, and I'll link all of these websites below so you can just go check them out. There are also Facebook groups, and then there's Workaway as well, which is more specifically for volunteering in any capacity, but you can search yoga and there's ones on there. So that's how I do it, and that's what I'd turn to if I was in an emergency and didn't like where I was. I'd go on one of those sites, and that's what I did in Canada. I immediately went on Workaway, found another place, and got out of there within a week. So they are good, and there's always something that will come up, and there's always people willing to help. Okay, so just to wrap it up, because I don't want to make this too long, these experiences are amazing. They're worth doing. If you're a teacher or even just someone who is interested in the yoga world, you have an amazing opportunity to be able to travel, to be able to see things and do things and meet people that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise be able to because of the financial restrictions. So it's an amazing opportunity, and I know I've kind of spent this video saying you should do this and you shouldn't do this and this might happen, and it might sound like, oh, a lot of work and not worth it, but trust me, it is. I've met some of my best lifelong friends. I've had some of the most incredible experiences all over the world, which have made my last 5 years just so enriched and fulfilled. and I will look back with the fondest memories, and I'll never stop traveling, and it's just an amazing way to be able to do it. So do let me know if you have any questions about this. I hope it's been helpful, and I will see you in the next video.